Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Brain Lady Speaks podcast. I am Julie Anderson, aka Brain Lady Julie here, and I am honored that you are taking this time to spend it with myself and my wonderful guest, Justin Jones-Fosu. I would love to thank him as well for being on the show this afternoon.
Well, I'm super pumped and excited, and because I am bald, my brain is ready to engage.
I lo- I love it. I love it. I love it. We're going to have a really fun time. And I'm going to encourage all the listeners to hang in and stay on till the end of the show, because that is when I'm going to give you all of the contact information. Because as you will see, as you listen to this conversation, you will want to stay connected to Justin. But before we get into all of that, I want to read you his professional bio so that you can get a glimpse of what he does and what he brings to the audiences that he serves. So I'm going to start off by saying, let's give it up to a man who's more comfortable in hiking boots than in house slippers. The high octane daddy of two, Mr. Justin Jones-Fosu, when he's not submitting life's metaphorical mountains, he's literally trekking around the world, whether it's Mount Kilimanjaro, Patagonia, camping out in the Grand Canyon, or navigating the ancient steps of Machu Picchu. As a founder and CEO of Work Meaningful, Justin doesn't just climb peaks, he scales the heights of corporate keynotes, delivering 50 to 60 power packed talks every year around the globe. He's not just a speaker, he's a movement, stirring up the corporate world with his research on meaningful work and inclusion. Author of books that are more like treks through the human spirit. His latest, I Respectfully Disagree: How to Have Difficult Conversations in a Divided World. And I'm going to give you a little insight. I hear he's got another one coming soon. Maybe he'll give us a little something on that. Anyways, that book is a guide to the modern day social explorer, charting paths through the rocky terrain and through tough conversations. He's here to share his map for success, sprinkled with his humor and that is grounded in research. So let's give it up. Let's get ready to embark on the adventure right here in this virtual room. Please welcome the trailblazer, the family man, the business speaker who can make even a Monday feel like a mountaintop experience, Mr. Justin Jones-Fosu.
I love it. You gave it energy. Can you travel with me as I speak? Because I love the
I'd love it.
energy you gave to the introduction. So, for all those, let's just sum it up. If I could give a summation of it.
Yeah.
I am a proud husband, and I recently got married, and we celebrated our 1 year. And so we have to thank you for updating our bio. And I now have 4.5 kids, and no mom. Tanya is not pregnant. It's We have a labradoodle, so we're really excited. So that at the end of the day, for me, a lot of the work I'm talking about is also what I do even in my own home. And so I'm really thankful to be on here with you, Julie.
I love it. Thank you so much. We're honored to have you here. And I like that you say point 0.5, because I have 5 little point 0.5s laying around my feet right now. I have Daddy, which is number 6, is outside, but I do have his 4-month-old puppies, 5 of them around my feet. So
Yes. You are so awesome. See, this is why you are so cerebral, because you have the beauty of the point fives around you. That's our next podcast. It's called the point fives.
I think we should totally do that. There's a lot of neuroscience with dogs, let me tell
Yeah.
you. Lots of great stuff. Oh, wonderful, wonderful. This is going to be a fun conversation,
Yeah.
I'm sure. Well, before we really I mean, I love the topic, because the topic that people are going to see when they're looking this up is how respectfully disagreeing with your father's choices healed your
Mm,
relationships. And we're going to apply this as we go through this through the leadership lens as
yeah.
leaders within organizations. And I love the respectfully disagreeing, because it's important to understand from my perspective when I talk to people about the diversity in personalities and brain
Yeah.
wiring. I mean, we're all so individually unique, and it's
Yeah.
that uniqueness that makes us so wonderfully special. And if we see the uniqueness as a clash,
Yeah.
then then there's problems. But if we can respectfully disagree based on just, okay, that's your opinion, that doesn't mean I'm wrong, doesn't mean you're wrong, it's just an opinion. um it makes a difference. So let's, before we get into kind of the meat of the conversation, tell me what got you into the corporate speaking world or into writing books, because you don't just have
Yeah.
one, you have multiple books and one in the works, right?
Yeah, yeah. I accidentally fell into this, and so it's interesting. And everybody's story is different. It's actually started over 18 years ago, and I know, I'm only 75. But no, I'm joking. But the interesting thing is, I remember I was speaking at an organization, and I was young in my career. And after I was done, people lined up to come, like, "Oh, this is one of the best workshops we've been to." It was a session called "Can You Manage to Lead?" And I was at that time discussing the difference between management and leadership, and what were those unique qualifying factors based on the research. And people were like, "Oh my gosh, this is one of the best workshops we've ever been to because we made it experiential, all these things." And then one woman, I owe her so much. I wish I knew who she was. She said, "Mr. Justin, do you mind writing your prices in the back of your business card?" I'm like, "Prices? Like, what, people get paid to do this?" Right? But I was an undergrad business major, so I knew how to respond. I was like, "I'll work with you in your budget." So, but that's the day, March 24th, 2007, when I realized I had been asking the wrong question. Because I remember back in the day, I read a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad, and at the end of the book, he asked the question, "What would you do for free?" And I was
Mm.
like, "That's the wrong question. It's not what would you do for free. It's what are you already doing for free. It may
Ooh.
just be a different manifestation of it." And I
Yeah.
realized that I was constantly just going places and helping people for free to grow in leadership, to help cultivate their ideas, to help them to think through what purpose looked like. And so that day, I went to my friend's house who I was staying at because I couldn't afford to stay in a hotel. And I started the business. So March 24th, 2007 was the journey of this business. And it's had different iterations as we've grown.
Hmm.
But that's what really got me into it. And then I finally got over myself and dealt with the imposter syndrome and all the things that came with. People kept saying, "Justin, when's your book coming out? When's your book coming out? When's your book?" And I was like,
Hmm.
"Oh, I don't really know if people want to read it." So, and I started realizing, like, I could. My superpower was taking complex ideas and simplifying it in a very practical, relatable way, while
Nice.
still allowing the foundation of it to be researched. So that's how I got into it.
I love it. I love it. It's interesting how our different paths in life. For a lot of people who've been listening to me for a while, they know that my first book was on how to homeschool with the brain in mind, because I was a homeschooling parent for 16 years, and so it was kind of like I went from that to different iterations of my company
Yeah,
into now working with corporate, and I think it's a really good place. Um,
yeah.
so much is built around a person's career, and
Mm,
we might as well do our best as individuals, as leaders, to enjoy that work. I mean, you spend
yes.
so many hours there, right? You want it to be a positive experience, and that positive experience starts with those leaders. And
Yeah.
yeah, and so if we can help the leaders kind of expand their thinking, I think it's a wonderful thing to do. So now your company is the title of your company is, going back here, Work Meaningful, right? And you were
Yeah.
telling me before we hit the recording button, what's behind that name. So share a little bit about what's behind that name.
Yeah, so with work meaningful, well, I originally wanted to call the business Meaningful Work because that's what I was researching. But meaningfulwork.com was taken. And I was like, "Oh, how do I do?" And it finally came to me. I was like, "What if I reverse the words?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, this actually works because work, period, is meaningful, period. But also as a, hey, we should work meaningful." Right? And I know some
Yeah.
people, the grammatical people say meaningfully, right? I understand, but it works for us. Um, but I love this concept because our focus has been, and I love what you said. The research behind our focus is that it's not about finding meaning in your work. It's about bringing meaning to your work. And a
Mhm.
lot of the research, a lot of people talk about, meaningful work is one of the top 10 things for millennials, one of the top 3 things for Gen Z, but it's normally seen as an external thing, which is actually points to the book that's coming out next year. And because it's been external, everybody's like, I'm trying to find meaning in my work. I'm trying to find meaning in my work. And so I want to, if you would allow me to give some shades of gray to
Please
your
do.
statement
Yeah. Please,
that it
please.
starts with leaders, is
Uh-huh.
that I don't think it starts with leaders. I think it starts with both leaders and employees. And the reason I
Mhm.
say this is because leaders don't control employee engagement. I know some of the highest rated organizations of employee engagements, and there are still people in their organizations who aren't engaged. Why? Because they have to make a personal choice to engage themselves. Now, what we bring forward is we call it the 3 rhythm model, and that there's 3 rhythms in order to bring meaning. And this is based on an original job crafting research by Wisniewski and Dutton in 2001. And it's this 3 rhythm: perspective rhythm, how we choose to see things; the
Mhm.
task rhythm, what we choose to do; in the relationship rhythm, which ties into conflict, is who we choose to engage. And if we choose and lean into those rhythms, that it allows us to bring meaning no matter where we are. Now, leaders cultivate it, but employees have to choose.
I like that. It's very, and happiness is a choice, right? So meaningfulness, having meaningful work is it. You can find meaning
Yes.
in really any job, whether you're, flipping burgers or you're,
Yeah.
working your way up the corporate ladder. So very good
Yeah.
points. Very good points. Now, some of the things, kind of going back to that topic and the respectfully disagreeing, uh,
Hmm.
how it's tell us a little bit about in your personal background, why did or how did confronting your absent father in Ghana, what did it teach you about
Wow.
navigating disagreements,
Mm.
both personally, obviously, because that was a personal relationship, but how that then allowed you to apply it in the professional atmosphere, the professional form.
Absolutely. So I didn't realize that I bounced back between these 2 different concepts because we called the 4 responses of conversational conflict. And what we found is that the initial thing I just wanted to help people solve was, how do you go from disrespectful disagreement to respectful disagreement? Because I am a disrespectful disagreeer. I admit it. I know it. I own it. Right. And so I was first just wanted to help myself. But Julie, I didn't realize that for a long time with my dad, I was disrespectfully agreeing. And what that meant is, and I'll translate it to how it works in the corporate world, is for me, I would stay silent on my hurt. I wouldn't
Mm,
tell him how I felt.
hmm.
I would just paint over everything as if everying was normal. And in the inside, I was struggling. I was crying. I sometimes would pull over on the side of the road and literally just start weeping. And in 2019, I was going to go back to Ghana and confront my dad, Will Smith style. Now, not the Chris Rock version, but the Fresh Prince of Bel Air version, right?
Gotcha. Gotcha.
There's
Thank you
no
for the
slaps in this one.
clarification.
Yeah. And there was an episode in the Fresh Prince of Bel Air where Will's dad came into his life, and he was so pumped and excited. And he was like, I'm gonna go travel with my dad because his dad wasn't in his life either. And I'm gonna do all these things. And his dad left and didn't tell Will. And he's talking to Uncle Phil, and I love this scene. It gives me goosebumps
Oh,
every time I talk about it.
I'm picturing it in my head. I know exactly
You
which
remember?
one. I
Yeah.
love that show. Yep, I remember that. Powerful. That showed his acting chops. Actually, go ahead. Keep going.
Yes. No, to your point, like
Yeah.
when he's talking to Uncle Phil, he's like, "Yo, I'm good, right? I don't.
Yeah.
I'll get by without him. I have kids without him. I'll learn how to change tire without him." And what most people don't know, Julia, was an unscripted moment in that show where he fell into Uncle Phil's arms, and he asked him.
Oh,
He's like, "Why didn't he love me?"
yeah.
That was unscripted,
I did not
right?
know
You
that.
look back, yes, that was an unscripted moment. That's
Yeah.
why we feel it the way that we did,
Yeah.
is because the pain that he felt growing up, he internalized it in that moment, and we
Mhm.
felt it. Like, I'm feeling, like, getting goosebumps talking about it now. And so that's what I was gonna go back to in Ghana and do. I was gonna ask my dad, like, "Why didn't you love me? Why didn't you fight for me?" Like, all these things. Because there's sometimes I didn't talk or see my dad for 2 or 3 years.
Mm, mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
And I internalized that there's something wrong with me. What if maybe if I do better, maybe if I'm good at school, maybe if I'm good at soccer. And so I
Yeah.
became this perfectionist, this chameleon, because I wanted acceptance from my dad. And so I was going to go confront him. But because I have a
Mhm.
great therapist, which I still have, and I'd love to talk about that, and a great leadership Charlotte cohort that I was a part of, they challenged me from instead of confronting my dad to going and hearing his story. And it's what a
Mm.
participant in one of my sessions later said. She said, Justin, they helped you turn a confrontation into a conversation.
Mm. Mhm.
And I learned so much. And I chose to forgive him, not because he asked for it, but because as I leaned in, I understood, better understood that my dad did the best he could with what he had.
Mm.
And that what I was holding on to was my own baggage, and that forgiveness was about me, not him. And so that was the moment. Now, you asked how did it translate to the professional world? Well, I also realized that in the professional world, even, and we didn't realize until we dug into the research, that disrespectful agreement is actually even more pervasive than disrespectful disagreement. And disrespectful disagreement happens in two phases or two fronts. One front is where you and I are going to be talking. I'm like, Julie, that's a great idea. And later on, I'm talking to, Emily. I'm like, what was Julie thinking? That was a stupid idea. I don't know why she would even say that. Like that's oh hey Julie, a
Yeah.
great idea. I mean, I'm with you in the project meeting. Right? So that's one side, and of course,
Yeah.
more organizations deal with that. But the other
Right.
side is you might have grown up in a society, family situation that taught you that children should be seen and not
Heard.
heard.
Mhm.
You carry that
Mhm.
with you to work, and you
Yeah.
are conflict averse. And so we want to help people to deal with both disrespectful disagreement, but also disrespectful agreement.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very true. So many people grow up like that. And it
Yeah.
does fold over into your every relationship you have, your personal intimate relationships, and then into your professional relationships. And that would definitely, to your topic you speak on, affect how meaningful you find your work. Because if you've
Yeah.
got this little thing boiling inside of you, um, you're like, well, I never have any conflicts, but that doesn't mean that you don't have them internally. Internally.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
That's brilliant.
yeah, it's definitely makes a lot of sense. And it's so interesting how we can take our life experiences on the personal side and flow
Mm,
them over into our professional experiences and learn from them and let them help your professional experience. So
yeah.
you have a term, dotted line dilemma. So
Mm,
explain what the dotted line dilemma, and you use the word brain.
yeah.
How our brains have a tendency to make assumptions that can hinder effective communication. This is a big one.
Yeah. So when we have the dotted line dilemma, it's how we fill in the blanks, right? So let me I'll do this experientially because I love doing this type of stuff. So and I want you to answer without thinking about it. I just want you to answer. All right, you
Mm.
ready? Okay.
Uh-huh.
So all right, Julie, what is the correct side of the road to drive on? Go.
It depends on what country you live in.
Yeah, you thought about it, right? See, because you're the brain lady, and so I love doing this exercise in the audiences, right? And so it's
Yeah.
most times it's right. I was on a podcast with some Australians, and they were like left. I was like, but what if you're in the U.S.? They're like they're wrong, right? And so I was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's interesting because to your point, it's the context with which we live, right? And if
Yeah.
people have lived in contexts that have been on both sides, they struggle with answering that because of their lived experience.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that we talk through is that it's our brain's shortcut because it's conserving energy for things it thinks it doesn't know, right? Let me give you a great example. We talk about, how we sometimes will drive, right? And so Monday through Friday, you take this exit Monday through Friday, and then one day you're supposed to go straight, but what do? You take the exit. Why? Because your brain is trying to conserve energy for things it thinks it doesn't know. And so when we meet people and have these experiences, we categorize it, we store it and categorize it for future use because of the ease of our brains. We want to be as
Yeah.
efficient as possible. But what we end up doing sometimes, and that's why I tell people, this is not something wrong with you. This is our
Yeah.
brains at work. Is that what we end up doing is that we fill in the gaps with things that we got from secondhand or third-hand information, sometimes even unknowingly.
Mhm.
And it takes the intentionality for us to drive forward towards some really amazing humans. So, in in
Yeah.
in a, in a nutshell, it's we ask people to you can't ever rid yourself of bias. You also can't ever rid
Right.
yourself of assumptions. You can just begin to challenge them. And so with the dotted line dilemma, when I usually if I came on here and I'm like, wow, she seems to be very brilliant and seems, like just
Thank
awesome
you.
conversationalist. Yeah, all the positive assumptions that we always have about other people, right? Um, it might require me to ask more questions like, well, tell me about your journey, or how did it feel when you got married, or oh man, your husband's from from Boone. Oh my gosh, right? And so understanding more of who you are, it allows us to challenge the dotted line dilemma and actually fill in the gaps with some really good information from people.
Yeah, I think that's super, super important what you're talking about. And I like your little phrase there. I'm gonna have to quote that in some posts, but it are to your point, so many things run on autopilot in our
Yeah.
brain. And it's those autopilot things that can cause the most problems. That's why sometimes I'm telling people you got to take a deep breath, literally visualize the prefrontal cortex of your brain firing up
Mhm.
and actually
Mhm.
think about the situation, because that'll break us out of those unconscious biases that we don't even realize oftentimes we have. But they're
Yeah.
there based on, like you said, different experiences, different assumptions, different things that maybe we heard growing up that we don't even remember having heard them, right? But
Yeah.
they were there. And in leadership positions, it's so important as you're interacting in teams, or as you're interacting with these other members at work. They could be snappy or they could be short, and you could be taking it personal when in fact it's their dog died, right? It's something like it's bits of information that you don't have the data on, but you're still making an assumption based on the defaults in your brain, that dotted line dilemma that you talk about. And so can really affect your communication, because then you go in the situation. And I think I saw this on one of your, and I love this. This is so cool. So I want everybody to go to his website, and we're going to give you the link. But he has see, now I gotta find your website again here. I'm scrolling on my piece of paper. Workmeaningful.com, because you have a clip on there, one of your speakers reels, and in there you're talking about communication, that a lot of times communication is like double dutch jump rope.
Yeah.
And that is so true. Oh my goodness, that is so true. It's so beautifully illustrated, because oftentimes we're so focused on what am I going to say, that you're not really
Mhm.
listening to what
Yes.
that other person is saying. And that's a big breakdown in communication. So yeah, beautiful
Can, and can
illustration. Yeah,
And
yeah.
can I give? 'Cause I want to give people like me. I'm a strategist as well, so
Mhm.
I want to give people the practicality of how to lean into that, right? Because
Yeah,
everybody's like, yeah, of course, I want to listen better and all these things. So
right.
here's a practical way to do this. We create what we call the power of three, and a power of three is where you listen at least to the third level of the conversation. And so what does that mean? So Julia, I'm like, hey Julia, how you doing today? "Yeah, I'm fine." I'm like, oh, I'm fine too. That's power of one. Hey
Mhm.
Julia, how you doing today? I'm fine. What makes you fine? Oh, I heard this interesting bald head speaker. I remember that bald head speaker. That's power of two, right? But power of
Mhm.
three is when I take it to the third level. It's like, oh, what made him interesting?
Gotcha.
Because
Mhm.
oftentimes what we find in our research, our own research, is that people stop at the power of one or the power of two because
Yeah,
they can't wait to get it back to themselves. And it's not because they're narcissists or not because they're egocentric. It's because oftentimes we're simply just trying to form connections. And I'll give you a really practical way this happens in everyday life. So imagine you went to an amazing seafood restaurant and you said, "Oh, Justin, I went to this great seafood restaurant." And I'm like, yeah, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, but have you been to this one?" Because
right.
I'm trying to connect with you rather than simply asking you, what made it the most amazing seafood restaurant for you?
Good point. Yeah.
And this is a way that we can better hear people and deeply listen. And so it feels awkward initially, and that's okay because it
Yeah.
did for me. But now as you practice it, right? Practice makes progress. As you practice it with your colleagues, with your team, with your family, you'll start to notice that you listen in a different way because you're intentionally asking, I wonder what I can learn more about what they just shared. And
Yeah.
that is also something that helps us in with respectful disagreement.
Yeah. I love that. And that gives you the advantage as a leader or a team member, to now know more about that individual as a person,
Yeah.
which means in other critical communication that maybe it is about this project that has to be, be done by a certain time, or you've got a deadline, or you've got a problem you have to solve. Now that you know more about them, because you know the way they're thinking, you know what's behind their answers. Now you know how to best utilize them within your team, or how to best communicate with them as a leader, or as a team member. So that's a beautiful, I love that. Beautiful illustration, beautiful application of that information.
Thank you again for tuning in to Brain Lady Speaks podcast. We are going to interrupt the conversation here because Julie and Justin had such an amazing convo that we went on for like an hour. So we're cutting this in two pieces for you. So come back next week to catch the second half conclusion of our interview with the amazing Justin Jones-Fosu. And as Julie likes to end all of her podcasts, everybody just take a nice deep breath. Go out there and enjoy every moment. See you next week.